You know, it's pretty crazy that I can spread out 8 balisongs on the bed in front of me and look at how different and varied all of them are, how unique they all are, and how good they all look. And I can look you in the eye and tell you that they are all $100. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Blade Bias. And we live in a time that is just incredible in the balisong hobby. When I started 4 years ago, I started on the Squiddy Bee. I started on this exact Squiddy Bee, a Squiddy Bee that has held up some incredible drops, some pretty crazy stories, and my entire balisong journey. This thing was $60 I paid. It was my first ever balisong, and it was the thing that got me through the first few months of the hobby until I was eventually able to pick up my glider Arctic. But even then, it was my cheap beater that I would throw around over concrete or bring out with me in public, and it worked really, really well for that. But the thing is, back in that day, that was really the only option that I had, short of going on AliExpress or Amazon and picking up some cheap thing that I had no idea what I was going to get. Holy voice crack. That was really kind of all that was offered, was the Squiddy Bee. It's the only reputable cheap balisong that I can remember, short of something like the Lucha, which wasn't even that great. And now, just 4 short years later, every single one of these is an option for that price, maybe a little bit more, or in some cases, a lot less. And it is just incredible. So I wanted to make a video kind of discussing that, because I don't think a lot of the newer flippers really understand how crazy that is. And I don't know if a lot of the older flippers appreciate it as much as they should. And I know that there's some that do, but in fact, I know that there's most that do, but it's just such a crazy topic. And if you go to one of the most popular videos on this channel, it was a video called Good Balisongs Are Getting Cheap. Or maybe it was Cheap Balisongs Are Getting Good. I made both of those videos back in the day, and one of them I remember really popped off. And this is kind of a follow-up on that. Budget balisongs are getting really, really, really good. And you guys, when you start in the hobby, are absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to picking your first flipper that'll take you through the first year plus of this hobby easily. I don't think there's a balisong here that you could pick that you wouldn't be happy with for at least a few months until you made an upgrade. Granted, there's some things that are older in here. Some of you might be like, oh, the Vulp, why is the Vulp in there? The Vulp kind of started a lot of this. The Vulp, if you allow me to take you back down memory lane to, 2 whole years ago, the Bally boomers are shaking their head right now. Oh, these new gens. But I was there. I witnessed the transition from plastic being dominant in the sub $100 price range to now being metal bushing, fully fledged balisongs that you can get for $35 in some cases. It is insane. And we owe a lot of that to the Vulp, as much as people probably don't want to give it the credit. Before the Vulp, there was clones. There were clone companies making things like the Alien and the Falcon, which were fine, but weren't really great, and certainly weren't accessible. The Vulp is one of the first projects that you can point to that was not only created by a semi-reputable company. Sure, Nibali's was still relatively unknown in the balisong community, but they had impressed with their previous releases of the Lightning and the Morse. Maybe not in that order, but they had impressed with their previous release of the Morse, and Will and Brandon saw potential in what they were doing and reached out, hoping that they could do a collaboration to really refine a lot of the things of the Morse and create a truly readily available, budget-oriented, beginner-oriented balisong. And the Vulp was born. And the success of the Vulp, which, I would go on to say, I would estimate that the Vulp is probably within one of the top highest selling balisongs of all time, easily, given how long it's been on the market, how many that they've made, how many they've dropped, and how huge it was when it first came out. The popularity and the success of this showed other companies that this was something that was possible, and this was something that they could profit off of if they got into the space. Ultimately, that's really why companies do things is so that they can make a lot of money. And so we saw things like the C116 on Amazon. We saw things like the Marcolo Comet. A lot of different balisongs from these still relatively unknown, arguably still the clone companies, but maybe not, companies were making these designs that not only featured channel aluminum handles, but bushings and actually good flipping and good tolerances, things that were unheard of at the price point other than the Vulp. And the Vulp also allowed Nibali's to take off into the stratosphere and become the company that, in my opinion, is single-handedly carrying the beginner balisong market on their back. Sure, we've had plenty of other releases in that price range which have been fantastic. The Orion, the Refault, the original Default, even things like the G10 version of the Comet that came out, or the C116 were things that came out and a lot of people were really impressed with for the price. But Nibali's would be the company that continued to one-up themselves, create cheaper and better products. And that started with the Canyon, continued with the Extrusion, and now reaches current day with the Impulse, one of the best beginner balisongs I've flipped in a long, long time. Video coming eventually because, you know, Blade Show and all that. But I it's so crazy that someone can come to me in my DMs or in the comment section of one of these videos and they can say, hey, I'm getting into the hobby. And then they can list off 6 different balisongs that they're looking at in their price range, and they're all good. They're all good options. You're looking at the Reverie? Great. You're looking at the Cheese? Awesome. The Overlord? Sick. The Vulp? Okay, maybe that's still fine, but like maybe look at something else. The Refault? Awesome. Orion? Great. Canyon? Cool. Impulse? Buy it. It's so sick. I sometimes wonder how different my experience getting into this hobby would have been if I had all these at my disposal when I first started. My first was a Squiddy Bee, and I was so stoked to get out of plastic and finally experience a metal balisong for the first time. You couldn't have kicked the smile off my face when I opened up my Glider Arctic for the first time and felt what a solid what a solid metal balisong that was tuned well actually felt like after watching countless hours of balisong reviews from multiple different creators about multiple different balisongs that I never thought I would own. And now here I am 4 years later with a collection that is bigger than I ever imagined. I think I wanted to cap out at like 10 or something like that. But sometimes I go back and I wonder, if I had things like the Impulse available to me, would I have been as hungry to upgrade as soon as I did? Would I have been as interested in getting that Glider Arctic, which then compelled me to try other things, check out the secondhand market, get my squid trainer, which then compelled me to try even higher level things like the Kraken or the BB Barfly? I don't know. If I had the Impulse at my disposal, maybe I would have just been content sticking with that, and all of this would have never happened. I don't mean that to say that, like, you are ruining your experience by getting something good as your first balisong. I think it's incredible that you can spend $35 and get a balisong that you could legitimately flip for the next year and probably be happy with, or the Canyon, or the Reverie, or something like that. But it's just an interesting thing to think about. Where would I be if all of these incredible options were available to me back then? I genuinely don't know. I don't know if I'd be in the same spot. I'd probably still just be flipping the Impulse. Genuinely. Maybe I would have gotten a few other things. Maybe I would have picked up something like a Machine-Wise Prisma or something. Or maybe I just would have blown all my money on a Seraph, and then, you know, that would have been the end of that. But, man, cheap balisongs have gotten good. And good balisongs have gotten cheap. When I initially made those 2 videos, those were 2 different things. You know, good balisongs like the Prisma, like the Squid Trainer, were coming down in price. They were getting cheaper. We were seeing releases from companies that were lowering in price but were increasing in quality. At the same time, we excuse me, we had things like the Vulp, which meant that cheap balisongs were getting good. And now those two have kind of merged. The cheap balisongs have gotten good, but those good balisongs are also the cheap balisongs that are coming out that have gotten cheaper. Does that make sense? Like, the good balisongs that would have existed have come down in price so much that they now take up that cheap balisong that is now good. I don't know if anything I just said makes sense, but it is really wild to think about. It is truly, in terms of beginner choice, and I feel like it's been so cool because I've been able to say this over the course of the last 2 years, and it's been true every single time. There has never been a better time to get into the hobby, and I can only imagine how much is going to change for beginners even just a year down the road. How many more times I'm going to be able to say that exact sentence, and it's still going to be true, because cheap balisongs have gotten really good. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying Blade Show if you went, or you're just chilling, enjoying all the content coming out of Blade Show inevitably. I'll see you in the next one. Later.